Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com. Glad you're here. It's Tuesday. We made it. Monday's over. It's done. We got through it. We're here. It's Tuesday morning. We're ready for another day. How was your Monday? Honestly, yesterday was an unusually good day for me, and now I'm in a great mood because of it. So I kind of feel like I've learned to master the art of the Monday, where if you make your Monday as productive as possible, get all of the crappy stuff done, out of the way, practice some self-care, right? A little bit that you need to, whatever you need to get done for yourself that day. And then what is this rest of the week, right? It's just nothing. I got a message yesterday from somebody who said, Austin, yesterday's show was absolutely fire. Really enjoyed it. They're loving the live stream. Thank you. Appreciate that. If you thought yesterday's show was great, I'm so excited for today's show. I have got for you one of the best shows I think I've ever done, at least put together guest-wise and topic-wise. There are some days that I come in here on the Wake Up America show and I'm saying to myself, oh my God, I don't know what the hell I'm going to talk about today because there's just nothing in the news going on. And I feel like everybody else in the world is on vacation to a large degree. Like Camelia's out this week, Judge Napolitano's out this week, so I'm scrambling. I'm like, what am I going to do? What kind of show have I got? Well, I've got a show for you, baby. I have got a great show for you today. We're going to talk to Mark McCloskey. You know him as the AR-15 gun-toting lawyer. Remember he got in trouble for pointing guns at people who were trying to come onto his private property back during the Black Lives Matter protests that were going down in St. Louis? Well, you know, he lives in St. Louis, right? He's a fellow Missouri guy, just like me. And he's going to join us on the show today to talk about his congresswoman, Representative Cori Bush, who's asking for $16 trillion in reparations. What? It might as well just be a bajillion, gillion, gazillion, quintillion dollars, right? Why don't just go out there and say $1 bazillion we demand in reparations? Such a joke. Mark McCloskey is going to come on here today to bitch about his own congresswoman. It should be fun. We'll talk about that today with Mark at 7:30. $12 trillion is the actual number. It's all fake money. You know what? Just print it up and give it to him. I tell you what. You know what you ought to do? Actually, do you remember that story from a few weeks ago? You might have missed it. It was kind of went under the radar about how the Federal Reserve, in order to solve the debt crisis, was talking about printing a $1 trillion coin. A platinum $1 trillion coin. Did you see this story? If you didn't, it's really interesting. Maybe I'll go into the details a little bit later. But I tell you what we should do. Let's just print 16. No, let's just print 12 platinum coins, and then we'll just distribute those platinum coins. We'll give them all to Cori Bush and say, there you go. That's $12 trillion. I mean, that's how it works, right? They just print the money and say how much it's worth. And that's how money gets its value, right? The government or the Federal Reserve just says, okay, we print it or we coin it. Here you go. I honestly, I just made this up right now. I feel kind of brilliant about this. What about you? I mean, I think I deserve an applause. Thank you, studio audience. Appreciate that. This is why you watch the Wake Up America show, to get your genius on in the morning. Glad to have you on the show. If you're just tuning into the Wake Up America show, you know I am silly and full of hijinks. You can make sure you smash that like button, because you know that you're going to love it, and you're going to continue to help us spread the message of economic freedom and personal liberty. Robbie Thurman's joining us today, as well as John Rail. Chris Morrill's here with us, as well as Buddy Mansour, John Knox, Burt Crash, Matt Unruh's here with us today, the Baron of the Bayou. Good morning, Baron. Nice to see you. Michael Nip, what's up, brother man? John Burrows, nice to see you, sir. I know who you are. Tyler Nelson and Joni Rankin, all joining us here this morning on the Cantina crew. I love you guys. Thank you so much for getting up early. Makes me so happy when I see all your names in the chat, honestly. And when you're not around, I miss you. I'm serious. Fed Up Kentuckians here with us today over on Rumble. Mr. Embry001, as well as Kermode Bear here over on Rumble. And if you're joining us on Rumble, I see we've got a lot of people over there already watching us. If you're there on Rumble, drop a comment over there in the chat and introduce yourself. Honestly, we'd love to meet you and know who you are and make friends, because that's how the Wake Up America show works, okay? You can text the show today if you want to have your opinion heard on the news of the day at 573-319-1586. Again, the text lines are open at 573-319-1586. However, I am a capitalist. I can be bought. So somebody's going to clip that one day. I can be bought. And then they're going to play it 25 times over and over again out of context. I can be bought. So if you want to drop a super chat over on YouTube and make sure that your voice is heard and help support the show, make sure that you do that. And I think you can also do that on Rumble as well. Not quite as sure how that platform works, but I appreciate the super chats. What's up? What's up? What's up, my boys? Can't say that other word. Don't use the hard R. Yeah. So who else do we have on the show today? Come on, Austin. Get to it. John Burke, the All-American Savage, will be joining us this morning at 8 o'clock. I'm excited to talk to him. This is kind of 3 stories in one. Well, maybe 2 stories, really, 2.5, if you will. But did you see this story about this woman in New York who rented one of those electric bikes? And then she immediately was branded a racist Karen because she was trying to take it away from a black man. But and everybody was calling her a Karen and that she was racist, etc. And she got suspended from her job over this. And then 2 or 3 days later, when the actual story started to get out, remember that Mark Twain quote where he said, the lie goes around the world twice before the truth has time to get on its shoes. This is one of those situations. So she's branded a Karen. And it turns out that she actually may have paid for the bike first before the gentleman who tried to take it away from her. But details of that are still forthcoming. And there has been a GoFundMe set up for her to raise $100,000. Well, why is this three stories in one? Well, John's going to talk to us about this, but the moniker Karen has been branded a racist slur by conservative commentator Matt Walsh in recent days, and he's getting no end of hell for it. But I always thought that it was a racial slur against white women. So I was kind of shocked that people thought that they tried to disagree with him about that. But you're not allowed to ever like say anything that benefits or helps white people in any way. You have to bow down and pay deference and do what all those white liberals did during the Black Lives Matter protests. Remember when they would go around and they would demand that white people like bow down and kiss their feet? You have to just do that. You have to bow down, kiss their feet. Oh yes, oh George Floyd. Oh yeah. But then the story that actually the third story in this one that's all connected was this story about Uber employees reportedly in pain and upset by a diversity, equity, and inclusion seminar on white women. Get this. So Uber actually had to sit through a seminar that was called Don't Call Me Karen. Get the hell out of here. What? What is this? What is this world we're living in? First of all, you have to sit there. I feel bad for all of you guys who are out there working for corporations right now that have these kinds of things in place because it's getting bad out there, folks. It's getting real bad out there. If you're an employee, it's why when I see all these big rich word for like a pinprick, if you will. These big, rich, nice guys and ladies out there who own these big corporations, forcing these employees to go through these diversity, equity, inclusion seminars. And I just say to myself, good God, I couldn't be more happy to be working for myself and independent. God, is it terrifying? Every day do I wake up like, oh my God, Austin, are you going to make enough money to live today? Are you going to be able to care for your wife? And if she gets pregnant, are you going to be able to take care of that child? And I have to make my insurance, pay my own insurance every single month and all that kind of stuff. And there's a lot of hell that you go through in order to work for yourself. But good God, I'll never have to sit through a diversity, equity, inclusion seminar called Don't Call Me Karen. Thank God. Thank God. You will, though, unless you figure out how to work for somebody else. But when these big, rich corporate jerks are like people don't want to work anymore. And like, I get it. Listen, I'm trying to hire somebody and it's hard to hire somebody. I'll never make my employees sit through a DEI. But I will say that whenever they're like, oh, they're talking about fun employment. It's not fun to be unemployed, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, I'll tell you, it's probably better for a lot of these people to be unemployed than it is to have to work at a place where they have to sit through this kind of crap. I mean, there's been a bit of a revolution, the quiet quitting revolution, people quitting their jobs. There's been a bit of a revolution in employment over the last few years, and a lot of these employers are struggling to keep up. And they're still foisting this woke nonsense on their employees, and they're wondering why people quit, why people don't want to work for them. I wonder why. Anyways, I'm going to go on a rant on there. One viral moment can ruin someone's life, says Chris Morrill. Yeah, that's true. That's true. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more again with John Burke later on the show. He's an all-American savage, so I can't wait to hear from him on this one. It's going to be great. All right. And you thought that was good? Oh, my God. Oh, wait. So good. Clint Russell from Liberty Lockdown will be joining us today. First time on the show. I'm excited to hear from him. All right, we're going to go conspiracy all today at 8:30. Sometimes I like to delve into the, because sometimes my conspiracies are proven right. Like that time I like to rub in Chris Morrill's face over on the live stream and be like, I called it that COVID was a lab leak from China. And he was like, no, that's terrible. And all the liberals were like, not Chris Morrill, but all the liberals were like, oh, that's racist if you call it a lab leak. Oh, it's racist if you call it a lab leak. And I was like, it's a lab leak. I don't care what you call me. And then like 6 weeks later, like Chris Morrill was like in the live stream. I remember back when I was on the radio and he was like, I will never forget this, Chris. I will never let you live it down. He was like, okay, actually, Austin, it might have been a lab leak. Thank you. Thank you. Austin is beautiful. Austin is perfect. I is smart. I is important. Yeah. Anyways, so what are we talking about here? Tucker Carlson was fired before he could give a conspiracy theory fueled monologue alleging a January 6th protester was actually an FBI informant, biographer says. Okay, so my conspiracy theory is, and I don't want to get sued for saying this, but I probably will. Maybe Mark McCloskey can hook me up with this later. Ray Epps was a Fed. I believe he was a Fed. I don't know that he was a Fed, but it is my supposition. Okay, I'm willing to, be proven wrong, but I will say that um, I think Ray Epps is a Fed. It's just my opinion, but apparently Tucker Carlson probably did too, and he was about to give a monologue about that. And you know what? Honestly, they didn't want the liability. Fox didn't want the liability, and I can understand why, because getting sued must suck. But anyways, I still think Ray Epps is a Fed. We're going to talk about that with Clint Russell of Liberty Lockdown. It's going to be awesome. This is going to be such an awesome show. I've got so many other great topics as well. I didn't even list all of them because they're so good. Are you ready? Chris Morrill's like, I don't even sound like that. Well, how would I know, Chris? How would I know? Unless you call the show or something. Give us a call and say, hey, Austin, this is what my voice sounds like. I'm pretty sure, actually, wait a minute. You have called into this show like once. I'm sorry about that. Anyways, my bad. I got called a cracker at work once. Leadership did nothing, said Mr. Embry. What? And did you like freak out and like run around screaming like, oh my God, and demand reparations? No, I got called a racial slur. I'm going to cry. Wah. You probably didn't, right? Because, you're an adult. All right. Again, text the show today at 573-319-1586. We love to hear from our listeners with their thoughts on the news today. If there's something you think that I'm missing, I want to hear from you so that I am serving you the best, because that's why I'm here, to serve you. All right, the big story today, the top of the news. Normally I would be going to like a commercial break right about now, but I've been blabbering so much that I'm actually just now getting the news 16 minutes later. Sorry. Social media dependency is linked to a reduced preference for freedom, according to a study. Now, this is in psychologypost.org. And take everything that you get from psychologists and the psychology world with a grain of salt. It is my personal opinion that about 90% of psychology is. I need a poop sound here. There you go. But sometimes you see things, and if they make sense, then it might make sense to like go down the rabbit hole a little bit. When I saw this story, I was like, yeah, this makes sense. And while this might be a confirmation bias, I do happen to believe that this is probably true. Kind of like with Ray Epps, right? So, anyway, social media dependency is associated with a reduced preference for freedom, according to a new research study published in Psychological Reports. The study suggests that people who are heavily dependent on social media may use it as a way to escape from the uncertainties and the challenges of the real world. This is a fascinating topic, especially for those of us and most people who watch the Wake Up America show. I would say, at least lean libertarian, if we're not, conservatives who swing a little bit towards the liberty way. How you doing? Social media dependency refers to a condition in which individuals develop a strong reliance on social media platform. Oh God, he's talking about me. Leading to an excessive and compulsive use that negatively impacts various aspects of their lives. Um, Hard to say. It involves an intense need for constant engagement with social media, difficulty in controlling usage. Oh my God, you got any more of them Instagrams? And experiencing negative consequences due to excessive social media use. Yeah, this is the kind of thing where we're all kind of saying to ourselves, yikety, yikety. Probably a few of us here, right? Previous studies had established connections between social media use and anxiety, mediated by factors like intolerance of uncertainty and experiential avoidance. Okay, so what's that mean? So there have been other studies that have shown, excuse me, that people who overuse social media do suffer from anxiety. God, I can't tell you. A lot of times, when I wake up in the morning, I check the news to see what's going on to make sure I haven't missed anything overnight. So when I come in to bring you the stories, I'm up to date. And a lot of times, I'll wake up in the morning and I've honestly been thinking about this just like in the last 3 days, where I wake up in the morning and I'm like, God, Austin, you are just pouring poison into your brain in the mornings. Cause I'll open up Twitter or Facebook and check my notifications, and somebody will be inevitably every day, there's somebody saying something hateful to me. And I'm not asking for your sympathy because, when you put yourself out there and I'm a bit of a pugilist. You get punches, you give punches, you get punches, and I roll with those punches, and I ask for it. So I live a life in public, and that's just what it is. Um, However, I'm not immune to the reality that, when you go out there, you have enemies, and those enemies are going to do what they can to try and mess with you. And the best way to do it is psychologically, right? And I'm a human being, and I have emotions, and I have a spirit and a heart, and I'm not just a rational, logical. Like a lot of the objectivist libertarian types, or I guess we just call them objectivists. They don't like to be considered libertarians, but the Ayn Rand types, if you will, they're very robotic, and I can imagine that maybe they're devoid of human emotions and feelings, and there might be some subsectorate of us that are on the spectrum that might be immune to what other people are putting out there, in terms of personal attacks may roll off their backs. Most of them do for me too, but every once in a while something will get to you. And what does that do? That increases your anxiety, right? I wake up and I feel anxious because you feel that hatred it needles you, right? Somebody says something that gets to you. Like something yesterday, it was somebody with like 23 followers, and they said something hateful or stupid or just, something at me that just got me. And like I remember, I think I probably typed a response 3 times and deleted it because I said eventually I had to say to myself, Austin, what are you doing? Why are you wasting so much time feeling this anxiety or this rage towards somebody who you don't know who they are? It could be anybody, and they don't care. It could be literally a Chinese bot, like somebody like Wang Chung in Wuhan, China, sitting there on a computer going, "Ha ha, me fuck with the American libertarian." Ha ha. Sorry for the language. Right? And I'm like, what am I doing? Why am I spending any time worrying about this? But I can't help it because I'm addicted. And not only am I addicted, but I also use excuses to say, oh, I'm doing this, right? But it's like, if you are you like me when you get bored for like a couple of seconds, if you're like sitting alone somewhere, you're kind of like you feel boredom, you just like compulsively grab the phone, right? Well, in my instance, it's not true that it's connected to a reduced belief in freedom. Although I will say that sometimes when you see how stupid people are on Facebook or on Twitter, don't you sometimes kind of go, "Oh God, maybe people are too stupid for freedom"? Am I wrong? Am I wrong about this? Because I do feel sometimes as if I do sometimes see why people are like, people are too stupid to govern themselves, right? I'm a monarchist now. Just kidding, just kidding. Anyway, so the author of this study, Phil Reed, he's a psych professor. He says that our research has suggested that many people use social media to calm themselves. Increasingly, people seem to be more anxious about, quote, things in general, and so an escape from a situation over which they have little control anyway seems a coping strategy that was highly likely. It's also allowed us to unite a couple of areas in the field that doesn't get talked about together: learning and psychoanalysis. Hmm. So, in this experimental task, the participants were presented with two colored squares on a screen. One square was associated with a forced choice, the other was with a free choice. After making their choice, participants received a reward. They repeated this process, and then researchers were investigating how social media dependency and various aspects of anxiety related to behavioral choices between free and forced options. They found that participants who had higher social media dependency had higher levels of anxiety and intolerance of uncertainty. So think about that, right? Why do people fear liberty? Why are people afraid of freedom? Because you know that this is an axiom that people fear liberty. They fear liberty because it requires personal responsibility. I think there's an H.L. Mencken quote about this, actually. Most men fear liberty, right? Liberty is not a thing for the great masses of men. Okay, here we go, Austin. Where is it? Where is it? Masses. Here we go. The fact is that the average man's love of liberty is 9/10 imaginary, exactly like his love of sense, justice, and truth. Liberty is not a thing for the great masses of men. It is the exclusive possession of a small and disreputable minority, like knowledge, courage, and honor. It takes a special sort of man to understand and enjoy liberty, and he is usually an outlaw in democratic societies. Damn, that's good stuff. Damn, that is good stuff. Good morning, Brandon Meyer. Nice to see you here. Welcome to the Wake Up America show. I'm about to run out of time in this segment. I've been bitching and complaining all morning talking about social media addiction. Briz Viz joining us over here on rumble.com this morning. He's new. Nice to see you, brother. We'd like to welcome our new friends. Says he has a mobile, but it does not have me. Good for you, brother. Congratulations. I'm glad. It's nice to know. I mean, somebody out there is free. Speaking of freedom, $16 trillion in reparations. Why don't we just put everybody who has to pay reparation in chains? They're going to put you all in chains. All right. Cori Bush, Representative Cori Bush from St. Louis, she's demanding $16 trillion in reparations to plug the equality gap. Let's speak to a St. Louisan himself. How do you say that? St. Louisian? I guess I'll have to ask him when we get back. Mark McCloskey, the AR-15 gun-toting lawyer, when we get back on the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com.
I like shooting things, but whenever I can't shoot something, I like to cut things. My life isn't all about shooting and stabbing and cutting, though. Sometimes I have to do actual work, but when I work, I still like to have fun. And there's nothing less fun than trying to cut with a crappy knife. Thankfully, from the ancient sect of Christian knights, who also loved cutting and stabbing, comes a new implement that has received my personal blessing, the Templar knife. Like the ancient sword of Excalibur, you don't choose a Templar knife, it chooses you. You just decide what kind you want on the website first, however, and then order it online, and then it chooses you. The Templar knife comes in a variety of shapes. As a man of culture and taste, I have decided I will never use a terrible knife again. And thanks to the inspiration provided by this excellent product, I have decided to launch a new crusade against anyone using less than superior knives. Join me, brothers and sisters, by visiting uppercuttactical.com/pages/Templar-knives. That's a lot of slashes. For that, you'll need a Templar knife. For 10% off, use code AP for Liberty and join me in a quest for glory, for liberty, for Christendom, for the Templar knife. Get yours today.
Fire.
Hello, this is Barack Obama, and let me tell you why Austin Peterson stinks, and you should never pay attention to anything that he has to say. First of all, he's a libertarian, and we all know libertarians are idiots. They don't realize how important government is to everything that we do. I recently became aware that Austin has opened up a libertarian shop at apeforlibertyshop.com. Now, I'm asking you as a personal favor to me that you never ever visit apeforlibertyshop.com. With all of the great Liberty merchandise there, the last thing that we need to do is to get people spreading this message around the country, because then they might start thinking that they don't need government. And that's the last thing that good Democrats like us want. So if you love democracy, like me, and hate freedom, then don't visit AP for Liberty Shop. Like I said, whatever you do, do not visit aporlibertyshop.com. I'm Barack Obama, and I approve this message.
When I was in foster care, I never knew when I would have to move.
So I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then one day, I was adopted. My new parents opened their hearts and home to me. My parents cook my favorite breakfast for me every morning. My parents take me on trips I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but they're perfect for me.
I would remind you that extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice.
It is better to settle these matters in the courts than on the streets, and new laws are needed at every level. But law alone cannot make men see right.
Good morning, Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com. Thanks so much for tuning in. Smash that like button if you're enjoying the program so far, and make sure you click subscribe so you can help us to spread the message of economic freedom and personal liberty, which is what we're all about here on the Wake Up America show. My next guest, he's famous for that as well. He's kind of been famous in conservative circles for being the AR-15 gun guy. Yeah, he's that gun-toting lawyer from St. Louis. You might recognize him from this picture that I'm putting up on the screen right now, him and his wife. Wait a minute, that's not them. Wait, that's somebody else. Somebody else who dressed up as them for Halloween last year. Mark won't be able to see this picture. He'll have to watch the show a little bit later to see it, but you can as well. One of our listeners sent that in of them, him and his wife dressed up as the AR-15 gun guy. That's how famous my next guest is. He's Mark McCloskey, and he's joining us live right now. Good morning, Mark. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Good morning, and thanks for having me on. You know, my favorite one is when they dress their pets up. Dogs look like my wife and me. So
some people would be insulted, but you take it in good spirits. One thing that I can't take in good spirits, though, Mark, even though I might sometimes laugh at it, is the congresswoman who represents you. And in some ways, she represents all Missourians, being a member of the House of Representatives in Congress, federal Congress. Representative Cori Bush, who has joined the Pander bus and decided to call for legislation that would introduce $16 trillion in reparations. Sooner or later, Mark, they might be talking about real money. What's your take?
yeah, trillion here, trillion there. You know, you think about the state of our federal government. We've got Joe Biden, a senile person, as president. You got Kamala Harris, who's the stupidest human being ever elected to high office as vice president. You got John Fetterman, who, as Don Jr. would say, is a vegetable. And you got Cori Bush and Rashida Tlaib, being Congress people. I mean, when you can get somebody like Cori Bush elected to Congress, I mean, my shoe size is a bigger IQ number than she has. And here's the thing, right? Her resolution, first of all, she voted, yesterday, the day before, against a resolution honoring fallen first responders and police that died in the line of duty. She wants to defund all police. She wants to defund the Pentagon and use the money for what? For her own personal security, because it seems like there's never enough money for that purpose. But you have 14, 15, 16 trillion dollars for reparations, and I say this every day. I've said this since I was a youth, as they say. Everybody always says in a country as rich as the United States, blah, blah, blah. The United States is a debtor nation. We have $31.5 trillion in national debt. That comes out to $240,000 per taxpayer, $94,000 per capita, every man, woman, and child. And you know how many Americans have a zero or negative net worth? 31%. 31% of all Americans have no net worth, no savings, no nothing. They owe more than they're worth. And now our illustrious Congresswoman wants to take 16 trillion more of those dollars, which would increase what we all owe by half again. So now we're talking $300 and some thousand per taxpayer, which we owe. And where's that money going to come from? Well, if you read a resolution, she said, let me put on my cheaters here so I don't misquote. By the way, what the average person probably doesn't realize is that the people that get elected have absolutely nothing to do with running the government. That here's let's see how many pages this thing in total. This is the resolution 414 that Cori Bush introduced. She couldn't write her own name if you gave her an hour and a half in a cheat sheet, right? Some lobbyist wrote this, right? And it gets introduced by some idiot congressperson who then puts it out under their name, but obviously they did not write it. When you see a bill in Congress, which is 1,100 pages long or 2,100 pages long, no congressperson participated in the writing of that stuff. It's just the lobbyists that do everything. But here she says, whereas financial reparations must be paid by the federal government for an amount that respected economists meaning people that wrote this, estimated totals at a minimum $14 trillion to eliminate the racial wealth gap that exists between Black and white Americans. Well, if 31% of all of us have no money, have a negative net worth, where's that $300,000 wealth gap coming from? Where are all these people where are all those people? I ask everybody watching this show right now, think about whether or not you've got 300,000 extra dollars laying around to pay some person who may or may not have ever had a relative who is a slave. And by the way, they don't even limit it to that. This is the language that they use throughout this isn't slaves or descendants of slaves. It's to compensate descendants of enslaved Black people and people of African descent. So under this proposal, you don't even have to demonstrate that you actually suffered or your relatives or people 7 generations ago suffered any harm. You get your $300,000 per capita anyway.
Well, see, by that measure, Elon Musk would qualify since he's also an African American.
He is. God damn it, you know.
He's my favorite African American. Good morning.
Exactly. World's richest man gets $300,000 from poor people.
If you're just
it's laughable, but it's going to happen. I mean, I was listening to the guy who was in charge of the Reparations Committee in California yesterday, and they so asked it. It was what's his name? Pierce Morgan was interviewing him. Where are you going to get the money? And his response was, "Well, fortunately, my job isn't to find out where the money comes from, just to say how much we need." And that's the definition of government these days, right? We don't care what we are ideologues, we're not realists, and therefore we don't care about how it affects anything.
If you're just tuning into the Wake Up America show, I'm Austin Peterson. Thanks so much for joining us. If you're liking what you're hearing so far, smash that like button and click subscribe. I'm speaking to Mark McCloskey. He became famous for running for the U.S. Senate here in the state of Missouri and becoming the AR-15 gun-toting lawyer here after he and his wife defended themselves from Black Lives Matter protesters who broke onto their private property outside of St. Louis. I noticed too, Mark, that they don't that while they are very specific about the descendants of Black slaves, that they're not very specific when it comes to where the money comes from, meaning that many of the Americans, if not most of white Americans who live in the United States now, are not or have never been descendants of slave holders. So people who have no ancestral tie to slavery whatsoever, or the antebellum period of the United States, would be forced to pay the burden for slaveholders that existed over a century ago that they have no connections or ancestral ties with. They're very specific about their own ancestry and very general about ours.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, for example, my wife's family came over from what's now the Czech Republic 1 generation ago. My little old Irish forebears, when they landed in New York, 120 years ago, they were treated like animals. They were widely disparaged, and there was nothing was considered lower than an Irishman in those days. But taken back before we came over here from Ireland, we were slaves to the British. The British were slaves to the Romans. How far back do we get to go? Do I get reparations because 1,500 years ago my ancient ancestors were enslaved by those evil Romans? Julius Caesar.
You got to take it up with the Italians.
Once again, we're laughing about it, but they will do this.
They're serious.
They will destroy our economy if we give them a chance. And and it's not a African American movement. It has nothing to do with reparations. It has to do with what everything has to do with, and that's undermining the economy so they can create the Great Reset, the single world socialist government. That's what all this is about. I mean, the bottom line is, in this country, it's still, and I always use my wife's family as an example. They came over here without speaking English, without a penny in their pockets. And in one generation, they went from a one-room shack in Johnstown, Pennsylvania, working in the mills, to one guy was the president of the largest advertising agency in the world. One guy started the American Enterprise Institute. Two of them were on the board of Penn State University, and not because anybody gave them a handout, because they came to this country doing what we all did. That we came here, worked hard, prospered, all pulled in the same direction. And you look at you would think that the average African American would be insulted to say, no, you can't do that. You can't pull yourself up. We need to give you free money to compensate you for your inability to work hard and make your own living. I think the average African American is insulted by that. I think that's why, for example, Ron DeSantis got 13% of the black vote, because if you respect people and you buoy them up, they like it, and they will prosper. And lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of African Americans do prosper.
I'm glad you brought up Ron DeSantis there, Mark, because I've actually been really curious to hear your thoughts on the presidential primary between, I guess, not yet candidate Ron DeSantis and Donald Trump. I saw that the numbers came out and it showed that Donald Trump had spent some massive amount of money, some like millions, many millions of dollars to attack Ron DeSantis rather than kind of build up his own campaign. I mean, it's kind of nasty. It's pretty heated, but here's a question for you that started out as a joke, but is actually a little bit more serious now. I know a lot of Trump supporters say that the election was stolen, that Donald Trump won the last election because it was unfairly decided. And there was a lot of cheating that went on. But the U.S. Constitution reads very clearly, Mark, and I'm sure you probably know this, that a president can only stand for election for president twice. And so if by Trump supporters' standards, he won the last election, he's not eligible to run again.
Well, there's an interesting question for you, isn't it? Of course, Congress says he didn't win because they certified the election results. But I mean, these days, who cares about Dominion? Who cares about the fraud on election day? The now inarguable governmental interference done by the FBI and the Department of Justice had their thumb on the scale. And so you can no longer legitimately argue that there was not election interference. Whether or not that turned the course of the election or not, an open question, but all the surveys I've seen have shown that if, for example, just the one thing, that if the Hunter Biden laptop was recognized as legitimate instead of Russian disinformation, Biden would not have won. And so once we get these inarguable facts out there, then you got to wonder what's going to happen in the future. Are all these people, the people in the Department of Justice and the FBI and the swamp, are they going to lay down and play fair in this election cycle? I doubt it.
Right. No, I agree. But then you'd have to say, if he's running again, that he didn't lawfully win the last election, right?
Well, these are philosophical issues beyond my pay grade.
Okay, I'm just saying that, it does say specifically in the Constitution, stand for the office of the president twice. So it's a bit of a problem that Trump supporters find themselves in on that one, because the Constitution is very clear about that. However, Ron DeSantis running, he's a fresh new face. He fights the wokes. He's actually a fiscal conservative. He seems to be a strong governor. He's a military veteran. He actually stood in defense of, put his body and life on the line in defense of our freedom. So he would seem to be a very logical choice to move on if the party decides, hey, Donald Trump is not the right guy. Are you open to Ron DeSantis? Because I see a lot of the Trump supporters, previous Trump supporters, are now like, we hate Ron DeSantis and we think he's doing a terrible job in Florida. And even Trump has come out in support of Walt Disney against Ron DeSantis. Where are you at?
Well, I'm a big Trump supporter, but I'll say this: in a way, it has less to do with political philosophy and more to do with personality. You're fighting forces right now. This country is fighting forces that seek to destroy everything that we stand for, seek to destroy individual liberty and individual rights, seek to destroy everything that has made America great. Now, Ron DeSantis may have all the correct politics in the world, but I don't believe that he has, at least I have not seen it yet, the force of will and the personality to take on, the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, to quote Shakespeare. The kind of onslaught of absolute hate, the onslaught of every possible media outlet trying to destroy you and your family. I'm not sure that he has the emotional stamina to stand up to that and just brush it off the way Donald Trump has. I mean, there's never been any politician in my life, with a possible exception of Spiro Agnew and maybe Richard Nixon, that ever suffered this kind of abuse at the hands of the powers that be. And the average human being can't withstand that. The average human being will eventually get worn down by it. But here we've got Donald Trump from, 2015 till now getting abused every single day of his life, and seemingly only becoming stronger as a result of it.
What I love, Mark, what I love is how much conservatives have been, I'm a libertarian Republican, but what I have loved is seeing conservative Republicans calling to abolish the FBI. I don't know if you saw Vivek Ramaswamy. He's the Indian gentleman who's running for president in the Republican primary, and he's been saying things like that. And a lot of conservatives have agreed because they saw what the FBI did and how it was weaponized against Donald Trump. Now, there's a lot of people, Mark, who have no idea. Their history lasts for as long as they have been alive, and that's it. It doesn't go back any further than that. Maybe a little bit about the Holocaust, but that's about it. But for those of us who have read history a little bit further back, we've heard about J. Edgar Hoover and the excesses and the cross-dressing in the FBI and the, trying to get Martin Luther King Jr. to commit suicide and COINTELPRO and MK Ultra, and how they've embedded themselves and played a genre provocateur and tried to stir up civil unrest here in the country. We know about the FBI doing these kinds of things. A lot of conservatives who are, I guess, what do you call it? Knee-jerk back the blue, right? Which would apply to anyone with a badge, have really gotten red-pilled on the whole issue of the FBI. Where do you stand?
Well, back when I was a kid, I'm 66 years old, so I lived through the J. Edgar Hoover era of the FBI. J. Edgar Hoover is like Jeffrey Epstein, right? He used the FBI to get dirt on people to control them, and it was very, very corrupt. But the whole government is corrupt. You think about people like, and I've said this yesterday on another program, think about G.H.W. Bush when he was director of the CIA. You got the CIA under him, and you got J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI. You got the powers that be were being marshaled against the individual in those days as much as it is today. But and you talk about Vivek Ramaswamy. I met him. He's a very, very intelligent guy. If Donald Trump weren't running for president, I'd be a Ramaswamy supporter. He's a sharp man. He's energetic. He's got correct ideas, or at least as far as I'm concerned. And he is far and away, with the exception of my former president, the man that I would support first and foremost. The problem is he's too young, and because unfortunately, he's as you mentioned, the Indian fella running. Whenever I meet people, even the guys that produce my radio program, and I say, yeah, I like Vivek Ramaswamy, they say, who's that? Is he the Indian guy? You gotta get kind of past that if you're going to be president of the United States.
It's true. I like him, and I think he's got a lot of great ideas. One last question for you before I let you go, Mark, and then I want to talk about your new project very briefly. You're a St. Louisan. How do you call that? St. Louisan?
It's still lousy misery.
So the home of Anheuser-Busch, at least the historic home of Anheuser-Busch. What kind of beer are you drinking these days?
Well, I'm unfortunately for the beer industry gluten-free. I've got celiac disease, so I cannot eat wheat. And so I used to be, yeah, I'm off the hook. I've been sidelined on that issue.
I'm sure you have a position, and I'd love to hear it, Mark. But I want to hear. I gotta let you go, and I want to hear about what you're working on these days. Anything else you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, I've got a radio program out of St. Louis. It's on News Talk STL. That's 101.9 in St. Louis. It's called Mark McCloskey on Fire. I'm on Sunday afternoons from 5 to 6 in St. Louis. You can also see it on my Twitter feed, my Facebook, and I'm on Rumble. And we do an hour of there's no opinions made. There's no comment on current politics. I talk about knitting and crocheting and
Mark McCloskey, you are a fantastic interview and a great Missourian. You definitely make the show Me State great again. Thank you for your time today. We appreciate you very much.
Well, thanks for having me on.
Thank you. That's Mark McCloskey. What did you think of him? All right. So Studio 314 over in the live stream, he had a comment. And I got to agree with him. He said, too young in terms of running for president, right? I think most politicians are too old. I know. See, when I ran for president, that's what they said about me. They're like, oh, they're too young. But then you got like Donald Trump and Joe Biden, and they're like, oh, they're too old. They're too old. And it's like, good God. I mean, you just can't win. Let me ask you, what is the perfect age to run for president of the United States? You tell me, okay? Remember when I ran for president and John Stossel was like, Austin, my problem with you is you're 12 years old. 12, I was 35, constitutionally eligible. The founding fathers of the United States, who built this country when they were like 21 years old, made it 35 for a reason. Because I was young, I was beautiful, I was ready to fight. You just didn't vote for me. We'll be back. We've got John Burke coming up, the All-American Savage, on the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com.
Good morning to the Cantina crew. This is Elon Musk, the CEO of Twitter. And I just want to say thank you for watching the Wake Up America show. I've decided that Austin Peterson will be the new CEO of Twitter.com, effective immediately. First thing to do, though, is I've got to go and blast off into space.
If there wasn't going to be somebody who was a fiery champion of liberty, somebody who would get out there and who would be aggressive, and if they wouldn't do it with more fire or passion than I had, then I would go and I would fight this battle for us. I've fought for the principles that we all share. Parties tend to be secondary to me. We're here because we believe in the principles of liberty. I am not a perfect messenger, but I think I'm a damn good one. This is a replica of our first president's flintlock pistol. You have my full support, my respect, and my gun.
I think that the heart of my philosophy is much more libertarianism than well, that's the fashionable word these days, I guess. A conservative is no longer just that. He's a libertarian and always has been.
Yet any time you and I question the schemes of the do-gooders, we're denounced as being against their humanitarian goals. They say we're always against things, we're never for anything.
What is fascism? Fascism is private ownership, private enterprise, but total government control and regulation.
Well, the trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. This is the issue of this election. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
The conservative, so-called, is the one that says less government, get off my back, get out of my pocket, and let me have more control of my own destiny.
If I had to pick up the phone, call 911 for one of my family members or one of my neighbors, what would I do if no one was on the other end to respond? What if there was no 911? So you can be a part of the solution.
Anybody can be a firefighter. Male, female, younger, older.
We have school teachers. We have leaders in business.
Is me, you, anyone that wants to be. There is no typical firefighter.
Do you hate the deep state? Do you reject the Antichrist in all his ways? Do you believe that aliens controlled LBJ to assassinate John F. Kennedy? Did you know that the shot can put chemicals in you that will make you more sensitive to 5G? Do you love America? Do you want more freedom? Do you like smoking hot red-headed libertarians? Then the AP for Liberty shop is for you! Check out all the awesome new merch and have a happy new year! Fight the deep state, reject the Antichrist! Visit AP for Liberty shop and get your patriotic merchandise now, or the deep state wins!
Approve this message. Believe me, Austin Peterson is the best. He's got the greatest Wake Up America show I've ever seen. Whenever I tune in the mornings and watch the live stream, let me tell you, he has got the absolute best content. I love his guests. It's just a total blast to watch, and I highly endorse and recommend the Wake Up America show. It's terrific, believe me.
Step right up, ladies and gents, to learn about the coolest president yet. He's not just any old prez, he's Calvin Coolidge, and boy oh boy is he different from the rest. He was quiet as a mouse, but don't you underestimate his power. He knew how to handle money, and he didn't waste an hour. He cut taxes, lowered debt, and balanced the budget with ease. No wonder the Roaring Twenties brought such prosperity and peace. But don't take my word for it. Grab a copy of Calvin the Coolest President and see for yourself. It's a children's book that'll make you smile and help your little ones learn about wealth. You can find it on Amazon Kindle or get your hands on a paperback at apforlibertyshop.com. So come on down and get yourself a copy of the book that's making waves all around town. You won't regret it, so get ready to be floored because Calvin Coolidge, well, folks, he really scored.
I'm a public defender.
I am a public defender.
I'm proud to be a public defender.
80% of Americans accused of a crime will get appointed a public defender.
Everybody from a speeding ticket to capital murder.
For every dollar we spend on public defenders, we spend $3 on prosecutors.
Public defenders have to do pretty much everything on their own.
Social workers, counselors.
Investigating is another piece of it.
The average public defender holds 300 cases annually.
You never feel like there's enough time.
Public defenders have health issues all the time.
A lot of people give up and say, I can't do this work anymore.
Gideon's Promise trains, mentors, and supports public defenders.
There are a lot of people who say that they would not still be public defenders, but for Gideon's Promise.
It's fueled me to continue on in this fight.
Gideon's Promise has changed the face of public defense.
People see us as troublemakers.
Good trouble only.
We don't make it easy. It should not be easy to take away someone's liberty.
Ever hear the one about the frog? Put a frog in a pot of boiling water and it'll jump right out.
Here's my resume again.
But put a frog in a pot of cool water and slowly heat it up, and that frog will boil. It's a lie. But as a metaphor for us and all that we go through as veterans,
any real-world experience.
It's a story that rings true. We make excuses for how we feel. We push everything down. We tell ourselves the lie that it's easier to stay in that boiling water, to disconnect. And some days, maybe it is. But you've never been interested in easy. Make no mistake, reaching out is hard. Do it anyway. You're not alone. You've got this. You are not a frog.
Find resources at va.gov/reach.
Good morning, Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com. My next guest, I guess, is not a confirmed white supremacist. You know how I know? Because yesterday when we were on the show and we were talking about how apparently getting up early means you're a white supremacist, which means, we're all confirmed white supremacists here, Wake Up Early crew. When I sent him text messages this morning about some additional topics for the show, he just told me a couple of minutes ago while we were chatting before the stream he's like, this mother sending me these text messages this early. So my next guest, John Burke, joining us right now. The All-American Savage is a confirmed non-white supremacist.
Are we sure about that? Because just breathing the wrong way gets you labeled white supremacist these days. Good Lord, man. How are you, Austin? Great to be here.
I'm doing good, man. Glad to have you here. And I guess another thing that can get you labeled a white supremacist or just a racist, or now as we call it, Karen, which some people are claiming is a racial slur, just disagreeing with a black person in public or preventing them from gaining access to your property or your rented property can get you in trouble. There's this story about this woman in New York who was branded a Karen because she rented a bike. She claimed that she rented it first. An African-American gentleman said that he rented it first. And so Twitter immediately destroyed her life and got her suspended from her job in less than 24 hours because of claims made against her. Now that story may not be true. What's your take?
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack there. The idea that you can label somebody Karen as a representation of a certain race is ridiculous. It's an attitude. I've seen Hispanic Karens. I've seen black Karens. I mean, this is just people are pulling this out of the fifth point of contact for something to utilize just to piss people off. But the idea, we do have to at least recognize the fact that black liberals are the protected class in our society right now, because apparently they've had it so bad for so long that you can't even argue with one. Meanwhile, Chicago is being burned to the ground. You got black teenagers running around assaulting white people. It's on video camera. You see nothing come from that. But one nurse, by the way, she was a nurse. I read this article yesterday, actually, and she just got done with work. She goes out there, get on her bike to go home, whatever the case may be, and just arguing with a black man is instantaneously classified as racist. Now, there's some things to look at here. Number one, Twitter is not real. Twitter is just a bunch of people that are pissed off and they're going to sit there and tweet about the dumbest crap imaginable. Everyone's got an opinion on everything. That's just the way the internet is. But I understand, someone like you or me that's been in the internet spotlight before and you've had cancel culture at your front door, it doesn't bother you anymore. You realize you can just shut it off and yeah, go screw yourself. I don't care. But to the non-repetitive user, it could be a big deal. I get it. But the GoFundMe part of it, they've raised $110,000 to help fight the idea that she's a Karen. Is what is she going to do? Donate to the BLM? Oh, wait, that's a big grift too. Oh, it's almost like there's a culture within America of, black on black crime. And you look at things like the BLM, it's like a direct representation of what's going on at the core of our country. We have symptoms of a massive sickness. And I blame white liberal women. That's who I think is the fault of all of this. It is white liberal women because they are so easily manipulated. They are so overly emotional. They don't have masculine men in their life to tell them to shut the hell up. That's the problem that we have. So these black liberals are manipulated by white liberal men because they know what they're doing to try and use them as political pawns, political gambits to further an agenda on the political side. And then you get the liberal white women that are just stupid enough to fall for this crap because, the black men are saying, we should be their allies. The same with the LGBT and the alphabet mafia. But this whole thing is just gotten so blown out of proportion. I feel sorry for this woman. But this is the other reason why you see these videos, like these Jordan Neelys of people not wanting to get involved on subways when you've got black people acting like assholes, because if you accidentally apply a chokehold for just a little too long, oh my God, you're now a racist. Even though, and that's another thing, you got the white Marine that subdues the Jordan Neely, but you got a black guy there too, helping him out. But yet, oddly enough, Austin, he's not facing charges. So please explain to me how somebody, and if I bring this up in the fashion that I'm doing, now I'm a racist. You see, that's why this whole ordeal, The reason behind it is just to cause more racism and more divide. It's a political thing that they're trying to push down everybody's throats. It's just that simple. And it's getting so aggravating to the point now.
Gee, I wonder why John gets banned from pretty much every platform that he's on. That's why they call him the All-American Savage, folks. Make sure you smash that like button like it owes you money, and subscribe to the channel that you're watching us on right now, because we are streaming on multi-platforms this morning in order to avoid social media censorship. John did recently bring me into a new app, the Freedom Hub app on the Spreely network that we are streaming over there. It's a new free speech app, which you definitely ought to check out as well if you haven't seen it yet. John, in terms of Karen and, it being a racial epithet and things like that, even Matt Walsh, conservative podcaster, he's kind of a provocateur himself. He thinks that Karen is a racial slur. What are your thoughts on what Matt Walsh has to say?
I do like Matt Walsh. I think he gets a lot of things right. He's definitely spearheaded a lot of movements in regards to fighting for or against rather transgender mutilation of children and stuff like that. But no, sometimes Walsh gets things wrong. And I know that's going to piss a lot of the Daily Wire people off and the supporters. God forbid if you criticize the Golden Jew over there, they're going to be pissed off too. It's anti-Semitic. Criticize Matt Walsh, and apparently now you're on the side of the left. That's how people think these days. It's like, good grief. But you look at something like what Matt Walsh says, and it's like, where do you come from on this one? And there's usually like this in-depth analysis as to, well, this is why it's racially. It's like, bro, you're just pulling stuff out of your ass. Karen can be it's just an attitude, behavior. Because when people say like the same equivalent on the or for black people is called someone Shaniqua, I've never heard somebody say that. Like, don't be a Shaniqua. Because I read the article you sent me, and it's just like, is this the comparison? It's just Karen, or let's just call it what it is. Someone's acting like a bitch. That's the two normal things that we talk about. So Matt Walsh, again, he is not the golden poster boy of everything conservative. He doesn't get it right all the time, because, it's okay to disagree with the figureheads and the talking pieces of the right. But on this one, I think he's definitely wrong. Karen is not, he's saying it's racist.
Yeah, he says it's a racial slur. He's probably trolling and just trying to get people stirred up for clicks. And we know
potentially, or is using it as a defensive mechanism to like defend a white person, saying, "Hey, stop calling us Karen," which it's only going to exacerbate the situation. Like, don't do that. Don't give the internet the how-to of how to piss you off.
Yep, for sure. You can text the show today at 573-319-1586. That's 573-319-1586. One of your haters is in the stream chat this morning already, John. He says, this is bigoted BS. He says, reparations is a debt by the federal government. This is bull stuff, bigoted echo chamber, held without any pushback from an opposing viewpoint. You're here. You're opposing us, man.
Yeah. So let's have this conversation as far as like, what is it that black people are owed? Why? So do you feel entitled to, let's break it down this way. If you are owed reparations, who is that coming from? Majority white people. But the extent of reparations, why is there always a backstop to how far back you want to go to seek reparations? Why don't we go? Let's go back from the southern sugar plantations in South America, trace it all the way back across the ocean to Africa. What about the reparations that your own owe yourselves? Are we going to go that far back? We look at CRT and things like that. It's always with this idea to try and victimize black people. Now, granted, yes, they did have some bad experiences during the American birth, if you will. But then what's the line in the sand before it's like, okay, you know what? Now you've had affirmative action. You've had so many programs put into place. How long before you stand on your own? Now, when you get your own, if you don't get your own way, you're burning cities down and nothing happens to you. You're seeing, white people convicted unjustly, might I add. You look at DA Bragg and what he's doing after, the Jordan Neely incident. You're telling me this isn't racially related? I mean, come on, let's stop playing stupid here. And as far as reparations, that's coming from you and me. So the idea that you'd be okay accepting somebody else's money for work you never did from someone that never owned slaves, you realize that 4% of the population owns slaves back during those 4%. So can you trace back who owns slaves? And then what about over 500,000 white people that died to free you? So let's talk about reparations for those that died. Are you going to start paying that back to the families that don't have any inheritance or generational wealth that the BLM and the rest of them bitch about? Because here's the idea. You're using the concept of a 4-letter word, which is fair, and it does not exist in this world. Should we go back to the Spanish, the Irish? Let's go back to the Romans, the French. Let's look at the Romans, the Huns. My God,
got to go after that Italian money.
Oh, Jesus. There you go. The Italian.
Italia. Mwah, mwah. Chef's kiss. This is such good stuff, John. People are loving it.
Oh, you love the racism.
They love the racism.
It's so good. The concept of Mario itself is like racist if you think about it. You've got a Japanese-made Italian plumber.
Dude, the funniest meme that I saw recently was when John Leguizamo was mad that there were no Latin people who were voicing the characters of the fictional characters Mario or Luigi, and somebody posted a meme from The Sopranos where they said it's anti-Italian discrimination.
I think Leguizamo, is Puerto Rican. I think too. Like, he caught massive pushback on that.
They're Latin, so they get to get away with it. I love it how it's like they love to be able to paint with a broad brush when they want to be general, but when they want to be specific, they get specific. But I love to conflate too. But on the topics here, John, I want to keep us on track here. Uber employees, and God, aren't you glad that you own a business and you work for yourself and you don't have to do this kind of shit? Uber employees reportedly, quote, in pain and upset by a diversity, equity, and inclusion seminar on white women, called Don't Call Me Karen. Don't call me Karen. Okay, so some people apparently do think this is a racial slur. The company has had to apologize to employees who, quote, did not feel heard after this seminar. What the hell is this story?
I think if you're going to make people go to a briefing in regards to something like that, you need to follow it up with an anti-suicide briefing. Because if I had to sit through that crap, I want to blow my brains out as well. Let's just be honest about this. Here's what companies need to do when it comes to diversity and stuff like that. Stop. Just focus on business. Stop integrating culture and business. Leave it as, we talk about the separation of church and state, which I'm all for. Separate all this bullshit because, my gosh, dude, you look at some of these companies, it is like a right they have to describe. For example, the anti-capitalist cafe that shut down after a year, because they talked about like pay what you can. Well, this is a great business practice. So you interjected your politics into your business, and what happened? It failed. Uber, same thing. It's like, what is this? Like, what are you trying to accomplish here? You might as well go give freaking PR advice to Bud Light at this point. It's a stupid move. If anything, if you're going to interject yourself into the political spectrum, pick a side. That's where Bud Light and the rest of them screwed up. You picked the left. That wasn't your demographic. You screwed up massively. Then you're going back to pander to the right. Uber needs to do the same thing. Either you go full on in and become full on leftist, which I think they pretty much are anyway, or you stay the hell out of it.
The company emailed its employees with an apology about the event. It was intended to dive into the, quote, American white woman's experience and discuss the term Karen. So Fox News is reporting Karen as a racial slur. Uber considers it a racial slur. Uber said to its employees, we've heard many of you are in pain and upset by yesterday's moving forward session. While it was meant to be a dialogue, it's obvious that those who attended did not feel heard.
Austin, here's the easiest way.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Here's the easiest way to determine whether or not this is a racially based slur. Can white people say it in a song and black people can't? I'm just asking. I'm asking for a lot of whites out there.
Yes. If I hear one rap song with somebody using the term Karen, I'm gonna burn this city down. I demand reparations.
Hear one black person say, no, you can't say that word. Only I can say that word.
That's right. Only we can use. That's our term, Karen. But I mean, here's the thing: the deeper seated, the darkness in this, John. We laugh and we're sort of picking this apart from the surface level, but there's a sickness here. There's a cancer, and it's embedding itself into our capitalistic institutions to try and pervert them against capitalism. I frequently say that the one big downside to capitalism is that it subsidizes the lifestyles of people who are actively trying to destroy it. And when Uber is engaging in these diversity, equity, and inclusion events, when the ESGs you might have heard of, these environmental social governance rules, are being handed down from on high, from the World Economic Forum and others, there is a sinister undercurrent that is a part and parcel of these kinds of meetings. Is there not?
Oh, yeah, 100%. You're seeing, like I said before, we're integrating politics and business at such a fast pace now. But it's funny you talk about something like that because it honestly worries me, man. If we look at people like the World Economic Forum, they do have pull. Let's not even kid ourselves. I don't like them either. But it's funny how, for example, you have the likes of Hassan Piker from the Young Turks, who's one of the biggest Twitch streamers there is, who talks about socialism and equality of distribution, all this other stuff. It's like communism, great value communism, if you will. And this guy gets rich off of selling this idea to his little simp lords that are sitting there consuming this content, but yet you're using a capitalistic method to get rich. And they have the audacity to complain about it. Politicians being the same way. Bernie Sanders, guy owns 3 houses. They got to pay the fair share. Like, Bernie, you've never held a real job. So it is interesting to see the way this is going to go. But I feel like, and this is me speculating, I could be wrong in this, but I feel like you're going to start seeing the rise of more conservative businesses be far more successful by the numbers, not the individual corporations, but by the numbers. I think more conservative businesses that support capitalism are going to kind of rise through all this other stuff. And the ones that are going to fail are, for example, the anti-capitalist cafe of pay what you can and go surprise me, like people aren't paying for your coffee. So
do you consider yourself a conservative, John?
It's a good question, Austin. Like, what is conservatism? Like, I'm not even a full-blown libertarian. I think I'm like somewhere in the middle of libertarian that leans right. I say constitutionalist because I think the GOP's got their head so far up their ass. They worship Donald Trump, which we're seeing the split between him and DeSantis' crew. But for me, I think one of the biggest indicators is the separation of church and state. I don't like the idea of having religion forced on people. And of course, it goes down the rabbit hole of like, we were founded on a Christian nation, yada, yada, yada. I get that. But, what is conservatism? What is being a Republican classified? What is that? Is that we talking about socially, economically? I'm a little bit of an isolationist these days after fighting this 20-year war in Iraq and Afghanistan. And it's like, well, we haven't even had a year rest, and then we want to go fight Ukraine. So I don't know where I'm at. I know I'm definitely not on the left, though. I know that. Those people are crazy.
It's called thinking for yourself, John, and it's nice to see that. Quest fanning over the live stream, he dropped a super chat. Thanks, Quest. He said, "White women experience? ? They give out White Claw there? ? Very funny, Quest. You can drop a super chat as well over on YouTube to help us to spread the message of economic freedom and personal liberty. I am a libertarian. I consider myself a libertarian Republican, and I believe in the Constitution and I believe in freedom. But I think that the problem with most people and their lack of willingness to accept libertarian ideals is they often frequently see the worst representatives of our ideals, and they confuse the people for the ideas. I'm not saying that that's the case in your case, John, but one of the big things that I want to talk about today, later on in your show, when we discuss immigration, is the really the big, huge, enormous factor that's rarely ever discussed in most of these political discussions, and that's because it's out of most people's reach, I think, and that's the economic question. And I think that we've really lost our grasp on the fundamentals, the underpinnings of our economy. And the economics isn't just something that applies to how you run a business, how you build capitalism and how you build up an institution that makes money. Economics is also the underpinnings for many of our social institutions as well, including immigration and including these discussions about reparations and racism and all these other things. We'll talk about that a little bit more later on your show. But I do want to talk about your institution, John, that you have built. I mean, I did want to say that I think that
I love how you segued into this.
Well, but here's the thing. I did want to say, on the political point on this one, that I think there probably is a concern that for people like yourself and myself, that we have built up our institutions to be able to be self-sufficient and independent from corporations that would try and foist their ideas on us and take people like yourself and myself who are free birds, right, and cage us. And essentially silence us. If we worked for a big corporation, there's no way you and I could say the things that we're saying right now and be able to get away with it. But there's a danger there because when you and I, people like yourself and myself, we divorce ourselves from these institutions, we're no longer at war with these institutions other than from outside. And sometimes it's easier to fight them from the inside. You get more angle on that one.
Yeah.
But I do want to talk about your institution. Obviously, you're a sponsor of this show. We talk about Shell Shock CBD every single day on this show. My wife she talks about you a lot. She's actually brought you up, and I'm like getting a little jealous. I'm like, shut up.
About the show or me? Or
she talks about you and what you're doing and stuff. She was really impressed with your new company that you were launching, and we signed up for emails. Because
I will send you out a bottle.
Yeah, please do, because she's really excited about that because she kind of is like, oh, we need to model ourselves after John Burke and stuff like that. I'm like, hey, why don't you love him so much? Why don't you marry him? But I love
a really awkward spot here.
I know. But here's the thing. I love Shell Shock CBD products. I'm using them every day now. And they're working really well for me, especially after I get out of martial arts class, which I'm over 40 now, John. So like I get the aches and the pains these days, dude. So when I use the Delta 8 products or the CBD roll-on that you sent me, I get pain relief. this is, and here's the thing, I think that's why your company is so successful, because your products really work. I mean, you must be really proud of this company because it's high quality.
It was one of those things that we had to fight against the snake oil salesmen that have represented CBD in the wrong fashion, the wrong light. We don't water down our stuff because people, like you talk about, you have a bad actor does not represent the entirety of the community they come from. If you get your CBD from a gas station, you get what you pay for. I was, like I said, I doubted it at first too until I actually tried it and it worked. And it's like, there is something here, especially for veterans. My God, PTSD, things like this, the Delta 8. Bro, it's in massive. Like, if you look at the reasoning behind why a lot of states are banning Delta 8 is because now big weed has become big pharma. Delta 8 allows the individual to do and treat as they need for pain, for PTSD. It is an amazing, it's an amazing compound that has been created. So it's just, you're right. We divorce ourselves from these institutions by making ourselves fiscally independent, and we don't have to fall into their shadows. And that also means not adhering to the standards they set forth of like, well, this is the only way you can sell this or market this. No, screw that. You can do, like, if it works, it works. Like, we test every product personally myself, and we will not release something unless I know 100% it does work, because all I have to do is release one product that doesn't work, and I've compromised myself to my following. That's what made Shell Shock very successful, was that I had the following built before it was all taken away from me. I told people, I was like, I've never lied to you. I've never lied to my following to sell something like Trump coins or Trump shirts or crap like that. I always held out. And then Shell Shock hit, and people opened their minds to trying it. And all of our products come with a money back guarantee. If it does not work for you, I will send you your money back. I'm that. What other companies actually in the CBD market do that? Not hardly any. So it's like, I am that confident. I told you, it was like, before, like, we sponsor this stuff, make sure you like the product, make sure it works for you. And I've become very kind of immune to the reactions, like, oh my God, it actually works. Like, yes, I know. I was like, I tell people, and it's great, man. It's a blessing to be in this position, honestly. And it's a fight. It's a constant fight against the government. It's a constant fight against the people that are out there selling it under the wrong pretenses. It's a fight against selling it against, people with very closed minds. But yeah, Shell Shock is continuing to grow. It's doing very well.
It's interesting how that is so closely tied to what we were talking about with libertarianism, how just the wrong salespeople can really give an industry or even ideas a bad name. So I highly recommend Shell Shock CBD because it works. It works for me. And I'm like you, John. If somebody approaches me to try and sell something to my audience that I don't believe in, then I don't sell it because, again, it only takes one bad product sold to your audience for them to lose trust in you. And honestly, it's hard as hell to build and maintain an audience and to do what we're doing, with our live streams and then our side business and things like that. Like, you're right. The government's trying to stop us, right? People who are doing similar to what I'm doing right now, they're constantly, being exposed every day for being criminals or frauds or pedos or whatever it is. And it's like, I'm not like that, right? This is different. And what we're doing here has integrity. So I'm actually really honored that you would partner with me, because I do have a lot of respect for you and what you do. And apparently my wife does as well. Before we go, very briefly, John, what is the new company that you're launching that people should find out more about?
I think you're going to love this one. I didn't really get a chance to talk to you about it. It's called 1920 brand. And what it is the cocktail drink mix. It's not alcoholic. The first one releasing is the old fashioned. I'm not a whiskey fan. My operations manager, now partner on this company, is, and we're manufacturing this in-house in the state of Texas here. It's all American made. Nothing comes from overseas. But I like the idea of, I've been doing a lot of research on the Prohibition era and how the government had the audacity to tell the world, or much less the country rather, that alcohol is now illegal. It blows my mind that as early in the 19th century, or 20th century rather, that this even was a thing. Like, this was even a thing. So I feel like it's just kind of like an example that we need to look back on and say, look, this is what the government has done before. Do not think that they are not about doing that again. Look at lockdowns. So 1920 brand, it's a gentleman's brand of drink mix. It's affordable. I think we're starting to start out at $34.99. One bottle will make you at least 32 drinks. Again, 1920brand.com. And on the website, much less the social medias, my goal is to tell the story from start to finish about Prohibition, the characters that had significant roles, from the bootlegging, the moonshiners, the speakeasies, and grasp the essence of what it meant to be a rebel back during those days, to say, screw the government. They don't have the right to do this. And also highlight the idea of why the black market plays such a crucial role, to say, screw the government. So if the government wants to make something illegal, drugs, there's going to be a black market. Guns, there will be a black market where people can get their hands on stuff. So you might as well legalize it and let people do as they want. So there's kind of like an undertone that I'm going for. It's kind of like a screw the government with this brand, but also I like the educational aspect of it, to where I get to create content that is going to be, again, educational, because I mean, I doff my cap to you, Austin. I know what it's like, what the toll it takes mentally when you go and you sit in front of that microphone, you consume copious amounts of political content, having to sift through the bullshit, and then you got to give an unbiased opinion on it, even though you've got feelings that are pulling you one way or the other. And it takes a toll on you mentally, to the point where it's like, man, it is nothing but toxicity, and it's poisons to the soul. That's why I take so many vacations. Like I gotta step away from it right now.
True, dude. It's crazy you were saying that. You must, and you probably weren't even listening to the show a little bit earlier. I was literally saying the same thing, talking about that, how when I wake up in the morning and I turn on my phone and I know that I'm pouring poison into my brain, and I'm doing it because so that I can serve my audience and things like that. And you know, I'm not a victim. And I said, you know, I told people, like, don't try and feel bad for me or anything like that. I've asked for this, but it doesn't change the fact that I'm a living, breathing human being with emotions and feelings. And when you see the hatred, and I'm sure that when you get these, you know, haters and things like that, that you're not immune to it either, which is why I know you talk about therapy, which is something we need to discuss another time. John, I got to let you go because I got another guest, and I want to make sure everybody gets the plug for Shell Shock CBD. Make sure you send me the 1920 brand, because I want to plug that to my, you know, give it a try and plug it for my audience too, because I believe in you and I believe in what you're doing, and I'm really excited to be a partner with you in this venture. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. John Burke, the All-American Savage. Check him out today on his own show today on Rumble at 12 o'clock Central. I will be on it. Have a good one, John.
Later, brother.
Thanks very much. Yeah, that's right. John Burke and me teaming up. He doesn't even know that I actually have an idea to team up with him for something else, another project. I haven't even brought it up to him yet. He didn't hear me say that because I cut him off. So, but I'm going to bring that up to him really soon. It's something I think you're really going to like. Make sure that you check out his website, shellshockcbd.com, for pain relief, Delta 8 and CBD. Like we said, we were not believers in it before we tried these products, and they are actually high quality and they work. And if you don't believe us, remember, if you try it and it doesn't work for you and you don't like it, you get your money back. So visit shellshockcbd.com. Use my promo code AP for Liberty. So that way John Burke goes, wow, we just made a sale. Oh, it's AP. Okay, I guess I should still continue to partner with AP, because that Cantina crew sure does like to buy them some CBD. You know how this works, right? Visit shellshockcbd.com. Use that code AP for Liberty. All right, guess what? You liked that guest? It's only going to get better. Clint Russell from Liberty Lockdown Podcast is going to join us next to talk about the conspiracy. The conspiracy that Tucker Carlson was kicked out right before he was ready to give a monologue talking about that potential Fed, alleged Fed, Ray Epps, you know, from the January 6th protests. Oh, it's good. It's juicy. It's an awesome show, the Wake Up America Show. Don't you love it? Click like and subscribe. We'll be back with more on the Wake Up America Show at wakeupAmericaShow.com.
Want an engaging website to boost your business? You're just a click away from 5-star Fiverr talent. Hundreds of freelancer skills like web design. Head to Fiverr.com today and get something started.
American conservatism is distinct, like America is distinct from the United Kingdom. American conservatism's roots comes out of the Wild West, out of pioneerism. The difference between American conservatives and European conservatives is that Americans are cowboys. We are that God, guns, gold, and girls. It's wild here, and we should stay that way. We shouldn't allow a European version of conservatism to come and infect us here. We like it wide open spaces here, you know, deep in the heart of Texas and all that.
Hey there, it's your favorite Vice President Joe Biden. I wanted to talk to you today about the Wake Up America show, the best source for all your political news and commentary. But before I get started, let me just make sure I have all my notes in order. Okay, where was I? All right, the Wake Up America show. It's a great way to stay informed and make your voice heard. Boy, what was I saying again? Oh, right. The Wake Up America show. It's important that we all stay engaged and knowledgeable about what's going on in our country and, you know, the thing. But hold on, where was I going with all this? Oh, Oh, yeah. The Wake Up America Show. It's a fantastic resource. And if you really want to make a difference, man, you can sign up to be a monthly donor at wakeupAmericaShow.com/support. Now, where was I? Oh, that's right, the Wake Up America Show. So if you want to stay woke and support a great cause, head on over to wakeupAmericaShow.com/support and sign up to be a monthly donor today. And if you're feeling generous, you can even give a donation in my name. Thanks for listening, and keep on keeping on, America. Come on, man.
George. Thank you for watching the Wake Up America show with my dad. Today, I'd like to share with you 3 reasons why you should visit Dad's online store at apforlibertyshop.com. Number 1, you can get exclusive freedom-loving merch designed by AP himself or me mum, Steffi. Liberty Laura has made some designs as well, and blimey, they are great. Number 2, most of these products are so wicked that they aren't even allowed to be advertised on Facebook or Instagram. Modern machine guns and a proper keychain. Plus, our Grover Cleveland t-shirt is so spicy apparently that leftists on Facebook specifically banned it from appearing on the website. Number 3, you're supporting liberty lovers just like you. Spend your money where you earn it, and you help me pups build a community that supports what you believe. Bloody hell, this commercial is running too long. Gotta run. Bye now. Don't forget to visit apforlibertyshop.com. That's apforlibertyshop.com.
Good morning, Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com. All right, well, this has been an awesome show so far. Everything's been building up. All the tension, all the passion, all the emotions, all the excitement, everything's been happening. It's been happening before 9 a.m. Well, most libertarians, they may not be big fans of getting up too early. But you bunch of white supremacists, remember getting up early? Sign of white supremacy. My next guest confirmed not a white supremacist, just like my last one. He's not a morning person. He's Clint Russell. He's joining us now. He's the host of the Liberty Lockdown podcast. Good morning there, sir. How you doing, Clint?
I'm good, Austin. Thanks for having me, man. I'm very interested in the topic that you wanted to discuss, so this will be a fun one.
Glad to have you here to discuss this one. Because this guy apparently is getting so litigious, I'm going to use words like alleged, even though it should be fairly obvious that I am an opinion show, not like a straight hard news show or something like that, not like most of the fake news anyway. So when we talk about Ray Epps, and I've been following his case for quite some time, if whether or not you think he's a Fed or not, the fact is that there have been throughout history a Jean provocateur, people who work for official government who commit false flag attacks in order to spark violence. Most famous example of that was probably Adolf Hitler and the Reichstag fire. So do I think that the U.S. government today would do something like that? No, never. They would never do that. They would never plant federal agents in a protest like January 6th and encourage people to commit violence or to go into the building like Ray Epps actually did, and yet he hasn't been convicted. But there's a new angle to this story, Clinton. I'd like to hear your take on the fact that apparently Tucker Carlson was supposed to give a monologue about this gentleman right before he was fired. Quite coincidental, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, look, I'll be totally honest. I don't know if that's enough to get Tucker fired, but given the fact that they had lost that lawsuit against Dominion and had to pay such an enormous settlement, which, by the way, I am still mystified as to how you quantify that level of a loss and end up having to pay that. But setting that aside, I still think that it's highly probable that there is some fire to the smoke with Ray Epps, and I think that there's a really good chance that that would play a role, particularly the fact that he had the January 6th tapes that were released to him by what's the speaker's name? I'm blanking on it.
But Kevin McCarthy.
Yeah, McCarthy, which was weird in its own right. Like, why you would give it all to one newsman is like totally bizarre. But the fact that he had those tapes, he basically did like a night and a half of reviewing them and putting them out to his audience, and then it was just radio silence after that. That tells you something. I mean, the plug had been pulled on that story from my armchair quarterback of this thing. I'm like, there's no way Tucker would have just dropped that story. There was a lot of meat on that bone. So I think that it probably played a role, but I think he had been going at angles that you're just simply not allowed to. He was going after Big Pharma and their advertising, on news channels, and how that kind of was changing the narrative for many of the newscasters all over Fox News and all over the world. So I think that there was a multitude of reasons why they probably wanted him out.
And did you hear about how the Pentagon was celebrating after he left? I'm sure they didn't like what he had to say about the war in Ukraine, did they?
No, they did not. And I think that was the other big reason. That was my initial assessment, actually, was that he is by far and away the most successful nightly news guy. And he was also far and away the most opposed to the war in Ukraine. So I think that if they intend to ramp that up, which they have consistently done so for over a year now, including the F-16 sales that Biden has said he's not going to do, and now just over the past week in Hiroshima, which really bothers me, he's talking about giving F-16s to Ukraine in a proxy war against the biggest nuclear power on Earth, and he does it at the location where the last nuclear war, happened. So that's concerning, man.
If you're just tuning into the Wake Up America show, good morning. Thanks so much for tuning in. Make sure you smash that like button and click subscribe. Help us spread the message of economic freedom and personal liberty. I got to give a shout out to my buddy Quest Fanning this morning, who is giving a shout out to our guest, Clint Russell. He says, hot tubs for liberty. Clint is the man. Cheers. Clint Russell is the host of the Liberty Lockdown podcast. What's this hot tubs for liberty reference, Clint?
I don't really know. I mean,
what kind of degeneracy is this?
Yeah, I had no, it's not degeneracy. I had a group chat back a couple of years ago, and he and some of my friends would just joke about how I was like one of the rare libertarians that has some money, and they were like, Clint's gonna buy us all hot tubs. I don't know why that was the thing. So.
Okay, I guess if that's what you're going to spend your money on, that's for sure. All right. Clint, we're glad to have you here on the program this morning. We're talking about Tucker Carlson and Ray Epps. I'd like to focus in on the agent provocateur angle here on the Ray Epps thing. It's amazing that so much video evidence exists of Ray Epps telling people go inside the Capitol. He has to be corrected to say be peaceful, because the people who were there were screaming in his face that he was a Fed. The things that he did, there are people who did far less on January 6th who are still rotting in prison. Why have they let him go? Why has he been so protected by the mainstream media, would you say?
Yeah, well, not just let him go, and not just protected by the mainstream media, but also protected by the biggest lunatics when it comes to January 6th and overstating how severe that moment was, and how dangerous that moment was, and how dangerous those people were, and how Ashley Babbitt deserved to die, and everybody else involved in that day is just guilty and evil and fascist and totalitarian and wants to overthrow their own government. And yet Ray Epps gets lip service from Adam Kinzinger, for God's sakes, is like, leave him alone. He's such an honorable man. It's the New York Times also, as you said, wrote extensive pieces basically trying to cover up for the guy or explain away what he had done on that day and why it's no big deal. It's just bizarre. The disparate treatment between he and everybody else involved on January 6th, particularly given the fact of what he said on tape multiple times, it doesn't add up. And I think that that's really all there is to it, is that he looks as if he is as big a catalyst as anybody else on that day. And the fact that no one wants to point that out, except for it's a partisan pointing thing going on here, where if you're libertarian or conservative, you're saying, hey, this guy needs to be under an investigation. And if you're a Democrat, you're saying he did nothing wrong, but everybody else on January 6th should be put in prison for the rest of their lives. What?
I got to give ups to Robbie Thurman over in the live stream. He says that Epps is glowing like Chernobyl. Very funny, Robbie. Thanks for the super chat. Studio 314 says 2 up for Clint. We appreciate that, Studio. A lot of Clint fans here this morning on the show. Grateful to have you. Sometimes some of your fans do get up early. Maybe you got to drop some more morning content, Clint. I know you're an afternoon guy. Libertarians not getting up early. I know. We're all high on weed. But thanks for the super chats, guys, because I'll use that to buy some people. We'll buy hot tubs for everybody. Thank you. All super chats today will go to the Hot Tubs for Liberty Fund. If you're just tuning into the show, make sure you smash that like button and click subscribe, because we're fighting for economic freedom and personal liberty, your freedom, your liberty as well. That's why we host people like Clint Russell on the show this morning, and we're grateful that he's so generous with his time, getting up early and joining us here this morning on the stream. Tucker Carlson, what's next for our intrepid hero, Clint? He goes on to Twitter. He becomes an even bigger star. I mean, I kind of feel like this is like one of the biggest, the bell tolls for thee. Ask not for whom the bell tolls for thee moment when it comes to the mainstream media, Clint. We really, what you're doing, what I'm doing, we are the future.
It's weird to say that, but I setting myself aside because I just feel too egotistical talking about it that way, but just saying, like, the non-corporate news path is clearly the future. I mean, Rogan does 12 to 15 million listeners per show. I don't know how many people watched on Spotify, but you saw the millions and millions of views that Tucker was getting on every single thing he's put out on Twitter. It goes absolutely ballistic viral. I really think that, and just for your audience's sake, so they can understand, Tucker was only doing like 4 million viewers per night on Fox News. Now he's by far the most successful guy in corporate news, and he's only doing 4 million. Every single tweet he puts out of a video does, 2-3 times that, and sometimes far more than that, sometimes 10x it. So I think that the future is not on corporate news. It is not under the thumb of ESG advertisers or FBI and CIA pressure campaigns. It's going to be the independents. And after COVID, I totally understand why the American people want that. They realize that the people that they used to trust are liars through and through, and they are seeking people who are independent and are capable of telling the truth. And the reality is that the people on TV are not even able to. And if they do it for an extended period of time and they become successful in doing so, they will be fired.
Clint, you brought up ESGs, environmental, social, and governance standards that are a lot of corporations are adopting voluntarily. Some corporations are having it foisted on them. This is essentially diversity, equity, and inclusion. You're going to have to go to racial sensitivity meetings and things at the corporations that you work for. And there's kind of a big two-pronged problem here, probably many more underneath the surface of that. But one of the things that we sort of identified is that people like yourself, right, perhaps independently wealthy, John Burke runs his own business, doesn't work for anybody else. Me, left the corporate world last year and haven't looked back, work for myself now, and I'm totally independent. People like ourselves, in sort of divorcing ourselves from the corporate sphere, right, we're attacking it from the outside. There's not many people going to be left who can actually resist this from inside of the machines that's going on. That's one problem. And then the other problem when it comes to these diversity, equity, inclusion standards and ESG is, I guess, the question of how do we fight it from outside of the machine? I mean, other than what we're doing, podcasting and, so much blather, if corporations are adopting these standards voluntarily, well, then that's in line with libertarian principles. And so I guess it becomes a challenge, because we're not going to ask the government to fix this, are we? How do we attack this?
Well, here's the problem. As is usually the case, the solution is going after central banking. that is really the root of this. The American people are completely ill prepared and there's no political will for that. Even if the American people wanted it, it's not going to happen. So I think that the truth is you're only going to get band-aids to this solution. The reality is that these companies would fail dramatically if it weren't for access to central bank capital and the manipulation of interest rates and the regulatory environment that suppresses and crushes competitors as they attempt to rise up. And that's why you have so few players and so many industries at this point. That's the reason income inequality has increased so dramatically, is that the Cantillon effect means that only the biggest corporations in the world that sit closest to the central banks ultimately benefit from all of the stimulus and
You're 100%
printing.
right. But can I interject for just a moment, Clint?
Sure.
And pardon me, I don't mean to be rude, but if that's true, and I agree with you. I think the central bank question is one it's not being questioned. But wouldn't you say though that the Bud Light boycott, that the backlash, even though it's not related directly to an attack on central banking, that Anheuser-Busch, or InBev, if you will, being one of those corporations, tied to the Fed in a sense, like benefiting from inflationary monetary policy, wouldn't you say that the Bud Light boycott is a good example of fighting back, or is it really just, is it isolated? The fact that it's isolated to one industry or to one corporation like that, is its impact, will it be muted or limited?
It's going to be muted because Anheuser-Busch InBev, they have so many brands, and ultimately the protest, if you wanted to hit them really hard, if you look at their stock price, for instance, I've looked at this recently, the 52-week high, they're very close to that still. I mean, the Bud Light angle on this is just not enough to topple a Goliath of that magnitude. They have so many other brands, and they have so many other income and revenue streams that the 25-30% week after week hit on sales of Bud Light, well, it is meaningful, and I'm totally appreciative of people that are willing to speak with their money and say, okay, you want to insult me as your customer, I'm going to take my business elsewhere. The unfortunate reality is that oftentimes that business that they take elsewhere is right back into another Anheuser-Busch product that they were uninformed as to the fact that it's also owned under that umbrella corporation.
Yeah, that was my concern. Was initially when the Bud Light protest broke out, I kind of rolled my eyes at it because I know how Americans have the memories of a goldfish. Actually, I saw some study that said they have less of a memory retention than goldfish. Right, they forget things almost immediately. But so I just thought, this is not going to last because there's no way it'll have an impact because people are going to want to start drinking their Bud Light, and they're doing it now. They can't give it away. But then, like you said, the bigger question is that the corporation having many brands, people might go and be like, oh, I'm not going to drink that gay beer no more. And they go and they buy another gay beer from the exact same company. And so, because people aren't going to, they aren't going to dive beneath the surface and go out there because they're like, well, I don't have Bud Light, but I got Miller Lite, right? And, perhaps they're both, owned by the same corporation. So, it is kind of like slaying the Hydra. All we're doing is just cutting off the heads, but we're not burning the stump. You know what I mean?
Bingo. That's exactly the point. And in a weird way, I don't even really hate the corporations for it. I know the incentives as someone who ran a business. I know the incentives that are being presented to the higher ups in these positions. I don't think most of them are true believers. Some of them are, of course, and I don't have a lot of love for those people because they've been indoctrinated. But from a purely entrepreneurial standpoint, where I'm presented this incentive structure that I know if I play ball, my share price skyrockets because I get more and more of the shares of my company acquired by BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard, etc. All I have to do is hire this woke lunatic out of some Ivy League school to run my HR and run my ad campaigns, and I'm going to be in the good graces of the ESG overlords. That is the problem. The incentive structure there is the problem, because you should not be, as a fiduciary to the company and to your shareholders, you should not be prioritizing the share price over your customers, because the the share price should be impacted by insulting your customers. But that's not how it works today, because ultimately, you know that the biggest money managers on earth are going to acquire more and more shares of your stock, regardless of how insulting you are to your customer base, and regardless of how many protests and drops in sales there are week after week, quarter after quarter. It's just about getting in alignment rather with the Human Rights Council and the United Nations and the Sustainable Development Goals.
Smart investors actually look at this and say, hey, it's a chance to buy low and sell high, right? Buy the dip.
Yes. Well, and that's terrible too, because it shouldn't be that way either. If you get a serious sustained protest, it should be a very big concern for the shareholders. They should be running to the exit saying, all right, this company's being ran by idiots, but they also understand the game.
Yeah.
And that's why they hold on.
Oh, and this is why I do agree that libertarians should be engaged in the culture wars, because I agree that culture is downstream from politics, and I know that's something that you discuss quite frequently. And you've got an awesome Twitter account that I love to follow, and I think everybody should follow Liberty Lockdown Pod. That's Clint Russell. Clint, is there anything else that you'd like to share with our listeners before we let you go? We appreciate you getting up so early, bud.
It was really not that early. I usually wake up around this time, but I just usually am not like recording this early. I had on Bryson Gray. He's a Christian conservative rapper. It was way too hot for YouTube, so that's going to be a Rumble exclusive. If people want to check that out, you can just search for Liberty Lockdown or Clint Russell. And I really appreciate it, Austin. It's been a great conversation, and I'm very happy to see your continued success.
Well, thank you, Clint, and same here. It's been exciting to see your rise to authority here. A lot of my listeners were such a big fan of yours that people were telling me you got to have Clint Russell on the show, so I reached out. So a lot of big Clint Russell fans here today. We'll give him a round of applause. And Clint, thanks for your time today and being so generous. We appreciate you very much.
Appreciate it, man.
Thank you very much. All right. Well, only 5 minutes left to go in the show. I got to say, I'm exhausted. I need like a cigarette after this. I tell you what, maybe not a cigarette, but I'll get like one of those Shell Shock CBD gummies after. What do you think about that? Should I do that? Yeah, I've got 5 minutes to go, but I haven't had a chance to talk about me yet, right? I've been giving you an amazing show. I've been entertaining you, bringing all these awesome guests. What have you done for me lately? I just want to talk to you briefly. My wife and I are working our butts off, our tookuses off, to get ready for Libertarian Christmas. You know, the 4th of July. Have you seen the new items that we've put in the store? Look at this awesome new George Washington shirt. Hey, girl, on a scale of 1 to 1776, how free are you tonight? Come on. You know it's brilliant. Come on. Right? You can get that and more at ap4libertyshop.com. That's AP, the number 4, ap4libertyshop.com. Yesterday, somebody bought for the first time our very first shirt of the what is it? Not the Washington shirt. There it is. The Lincoln shirt. Yeah, 407 beers ago. Somebody got the Abraham Lincoln shirt, and we did sell a couple of the koozies, right? The little mugs, drink holders and stuff like that. But honestly, I think the shirt is even cooler because everybody's going to be wanting to talk to you about that awesome Abraham Lincoln shirt you have. And even if you're an Abraham Lincoln hater, yesterday I sent out an email to advertise the t-shirt, and it was full of libertarian quotes and like some like left people who hate Abraham Lincoln. And so I put out people who hate Abraham Lincoln quotes, and the quotes they said like Ron Paul, Judge Napolitano, and even Howard Zinn, that kind of lefty communist guy who like wrote things negatively about Abraham Lincoln. So I sent out an email from the AP for Liberty shop list to let them know. And then I was like, but if you don't hate Abraham Lincoln, and if you just don't care enough to fight about Abraham Lincoln, and you also just want an awesome shirt, 407 beers ago, check it out over at ap4libertyshop.com. Honestly, we've got so many awesome products over at ap4libertyshop.com these days that you've got to check out the shop because we add new stuff every single day. Like Stephanie made a Thomas Jefferson grilling shirt, and it was like live free or grill. And she woke me up this morning, I kid you not, at 5 a.m. When we woke up first, she's like, Austin, she's like, I made this shirt, Thomas Jefferson shirt, say live free or grill. It's also a barbecue apron, by the way, too. And I'm kidding. I'm not kidding. 5 a.m. my wife goes, I should have made the shirt say live free and grill. Live free and grill. Sorry, I think it works either way. But yes, live free and grill. Exactly. Because then it's like live free or grill. And it's like, well, the other thing's right. If you're thinking too much, you're not drinking enough. You're not drinking too much. So 407 beers ago at ap4libertyshop.com. I love you guys. I have an absolute blast producing this show for you every single day. It makes my voice tired. My throat hurts. It's hot. I'm ready to get the heck out of here, turn off all these lights, and go home, and then go do it all over again when I'm on John Burke's show later today at noon. If you like the show, make sure you smash that like button. Subscribe to the channel. We've got a lot of people watching us over on Rumble who aren't subscribed, and I'd love to have you as a subscription because Rumble is one of the big platforms of the future, I believe. Bluthright over on Rumble joining us. Kermode Bear. Cries of Treason. 4MP3D. Nunya Bidness. Fed Up Kentuckian. Briz Viz. Did I say Kermode Bear? I think I said Kermode Bear. How about our friends over on the Cantina crew? Robbie Thurman, Quest Fanning, Corey C., John Knox, Brandon Meyer, Studio 314, Barney Stiles, Hoperoni, Corey C. Did I say Corey C? I think I did. I think I did. John Rail, many others who joined us today on the show. I appreciate it. I hope you liked the show from today. I felt like everything came together very well. Great guests, great topics. And guess what? Same thing tomorrow morning. Awesomeness every day. I keep bringing the heat. See you tomorrow. Don't forget, visit the AP for Liberty shop once we sign off. And I'll see you over there on the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com.
I like shooting things, but whenever I can't shoot something, I like to cut things. My life isn't all about shooting and stabbing and cutting, though. Sometimes I have to do actual work, but when I work, I still like to have fun. And there's nothing less fun than trying to cut with a crappy knife. Thankfully, from the ancient sect of Christian knights, who also loved cutting and stabbing, comes a new implement that has received my personal blessing, the Templar knife. Like the ancient sword of Excalibur, you don't choose a Templar knife, it chooses you. You just decide what kind you want on the website first, however, and then order it online, and then it chooses you. The Templar knife comes in a variety of shapes. As a man of culture and taste, I have decided I will never use a terrible knife again. And thanks to the inspiration provided by this excellent product, I have decided to launch a new crusade against anyone using less than superior knives. Join me, brothers and sisters, by visiting uppercuttactical.com/pages/Templar-knives. That's a lot of slashes. For that, you'll need a Templar knife. For 10% off, use code AP for Liberty and join me in a quest for glory, for liberty, for Christendom, for the Templar knife. Get yours today. Fire.
Hello, this is Barack Obama, and let me tell you why Austin Peterson stinks, and you should never pay attention to anything that he has to say. First of all, he's a libertarian, and we all know libertarians are idiots. They don't realize how important government is to everything that we do. I recently became aware that Austin has opened up a libertarian shop at ap4libertyshop.com. Now, I'm asking you as a personal favor to me that you never ever visit ap4libertyshop.com. With all of the great Liberty merchandise there, the last thing that we need to do is to get people spreading this message around the country, because then they might start thinking that they don't need government. And that's the last thing that good Democrats like us want. So if you love democracy, like me, and hate freedom, then don't visit AP for Liberty Shop. Like I said, whatever you do, do not visit ap4libertyshop.com. I'm Barack Obama, and I approve this message.
Want an engaging website to boost your business? You're just a click away from 5-star Fiverr talent. Hundreds of freelancer skills like web design. Head to Fiverr.com today and get something started.
When I was in foster care, I never knew when I would have to move, so I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then one day, I was adopted. My new parents opened their hearts and home to me. My parents cook my favorite breakfast for me every morning. My parents take me on trips I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but they're perfect for me.
I would remind you that extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice.
It is better to settle these matters in the courts than on the streets, and new laws are needed at every level. But law alone cannot make men see right.